Hello and welcome to the Speaking Archaeologically video on Phulkari, the embroidery tradition of Punjab. Bronze needles excavated at Mohenjo-daro, dating back to circa 2700 BCE, show that embroidery as an art is an indigenous profession in India. The textual reference of the never-breaking needle in the Rigveda and the frescoes of Ajanta and Ellora are exquisite examples of fine workmanship in ancient Indian society. Later on, the influence of the incoming races and tribes contributed a great deal towards the development of art along the lines which have given it its present form. Phulkari is an ancient embroidery technique that originated in the Punjab region. It is now divided as an art form between India and Pakistan, literally deriving its meaning from Phul, which means flower, and Kari, that means work. It is an art form in which hand-spun cloth is exquisitely embroidered, worn as shawls, dupattas and headscarves with untwisted silken thread. This tradition was known and practiced in West Punjab, in the districts of Peshawar, Sialkot, Jhelum, Rawalpindi and Hazara, and in the East Punjab in Amritsar, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Ambala and the former Sikh states of Patiala, Kapurthala, Nabha, Faridkot and Jeend. Let us now look at its origin and history. By virtue of its geographical location in the northern reaches of the subcontinent, Punjab has been, for over 2000 years, a region of cultural amalgamation. Numerous tribal cultures of Central Asia, as well as Greek, Buddhist and Muslim influences, have interacted with traditional India, thus leaving their mark on the natives. Due to the unsettled background and the harsh tropical climate in which fabric rots very easily, very few Phulkari samples have survived beyond a century, leaving the origin of this craft difficult to pinpoint to even an epoch. It can, however, be inferred that it developed over time. It is believed that the tradition was brought by the Persians to Kashmir, where this type of work is known as Gulkari, Gul meaning flower. The term Phulkari also refers to flower work. However, Kashmiri embroidery is very different from the stitchcraft of Punjab and Haryana, where this art form is still prevalent. It is also believed that the Jats and Gujars migrated to Punjab, Haryana and Gujarat from Central Asia and brought the stitchcraft of Phulkari with them. The Persian and Central Asian nomads were weavers. Perhaps the sense of color might have been inspired from these nomads, but the embroidery on homespun, woven khadar was very much an Indian concept. The earliest reference to Phulkari is found in the holy book of Sikhism, Sri Guru Granth Sahib. In its present form, Phulkari embroidery has been popular since the 15th century. Having discussed its origins, let us now look at the materials used and the technique of make. The fabric most often used for all Phulkaris or bag is khadar, that is, hand-woven coarse cotton. During earlier times, the khadar was first spun at home on charkhas by the women of the house. The cotton thread was then given to the village weavers. The cloth was dyed either by the women at home or given to the dyer or the rangares. Such a base was strong, long-lasting and cheap, and at the same time facilitated the much-needed counting of threads while stitching. Besides, it could be easily worked on without a frame, and the cloth did not pucker or pull. Colors like white, dark blue, black and brown were generally used for the base cloth. But the most preferred color was red. Red dye was obtained from several sources, but mostly from manjeet, the Indian madder plant. Yellow dye was obtained from turmeric, saffron, pomegranate and several other plants, and blue from indigo and chaunkanda or cassia tara. The fabric itself was used as an inner decoration so that the pattern sewn on it becomes more distinct and attractive. The needle preferred for embroidery was a long one, so that the cloth could be nibbed at a number of places for a single pull of the thread. Most Most parts of Punjab used silk floss known as pat for embroidery. The silk floss used to come from Kashmir, Afghanistan and Bengal. The best quality silk came from China. It was dyed at Dera Ghazi Khan, Amritsar and Jammu. And from there, it was distributed all over the Punjab by small shopkeepers and peddlers. Intermittent and erratic buying from different peddlers and consequently from different lots led to several shades of the same colours being used for the same Phulkari. By the beginning of the 20th century, vegetable dyes had been replaced by aniline dyes, and the latter made the dyeing process simpler and less time consuming. They imparted a brightness to silk and most importantly changed the traditional palette by introducing many new shades. The technique was usually the same regardless of the area. Whether the work in hand was sparsely embroidered Phulkari or a fully worked bag, the embroidery was always done from the reverse of the pattern side. The stitch used was the darning stitch, and so visual effects were created by changing the direction of the stitch, allowing the silk floss to catch the light from different angles when the Phulkari was worn. The patterns were not drawn or delineated beforehand, except sometimes when temporary lines were used on bags. Towards the end of the 20th century, when Phulkari pattern also began to include pictorial depictions of everyday life, the method of embroidery remained the same. The Phulkari motifs show a tribal origin, but their later guise is that of a village craft. Some of the most prominent geometrical figures are the triangle, square, line, rectangle, diamond pattern, arrowheads or chevrons, and different types of crosses and zigzag lines indicating lightning. Some motifs are oval, circular, series of spirals, or coils of varying rhythms composed of small straight lines gradually turning in the direction sought to create the effect of a curve. Common birds and animals are also depicted on Phulkari. The elephant, vehicle of the rain god Indra, symbolizes water, wisdom, strength and memory. The horse symbolizes speed and loyalty, and the parrot, vehicle of Kamdev, the god of love and desire. Phulkaris have the Om or Ek Onkar symbol embroidered as the first auspicious symbol in the corner or at a prominent place. There are various types of Phulkari patterns. Vari the Bag, for example, is made and presented by the grandmother of the bridegroom to the bride. Embroidered on a red khaddar or coarse cloth with yellow color, it symbolizes happiness and fertility. The work being very fine sometimes takes a year to complete. Ghungat Bag is a veil or a shawl. It is embroidered with triangular motif on the portion of the Phulkari that covers the head. Chope is a wedding Phulkari given to the girl at the time of a wedding by her maternal grandmother. It is done with a double down stitch on a rich red colored background with yellow silk thread embroidery and is larger than the original Phulkari. It is very laborious to embroider, as both sides must look similar in design. Subair is a Phulkari made on red khaddar with yellow thread. It has fine floral motifs in each corner. Rest of the field is left plain. It is considered an auspicious Phulkari and is worn by the bride at the time of the Peras. Shalu is the shawl for daily use in red khaddar with less embroidery. The embroidery is done only at a distance or only on the borders, with a width of 3 to 4 inches with the center of the material left plain. Til Pattar means sprinkled sesame seeds. These Phulkaris are made on inferior quail of khaddar, on inferior quality of khaddar, and are very sparsely embroidered. They are of domestic use and are given away at the time of marriage to servants. Nilak or Phulkari worked on the back of navy blue khaddar with yellow and crimson red silk floss is popular among Hindus and Muslims, especially peasant women. Shishedar are embroidered all over with small circular dull pieces of glass on red and dark brown backgrounds with yellow yarn, giving a lot of depth and ornamental look to the embroidery. This type of Phulkari is very popular in Rohtak, Hisar, Gurgaon and Delhi. The Phulkari designs from Patinda have jewelry designs like gulband, karnapul, jhumka, etc. The art of embroidery in Punjab is centuries old, as it was a part of girls' education. In Sri Guru Granth Sahib, Guru Nanak, the first Sikh Guru, wrote, Kad kasida paaye re choli, tan tu jane nari, which translates to, when you have embroidered a blouse, only then you will be recognized as an accomplished woman. Phulkaris were originally made by Punjabi women for their own personal use. The female members of the family would gather in the leisure hours of the afternoon to spin with the charkha wheel and embroider. For ceremonial occasions, however, a special kind of phulkari known as bag was made, where the whole surface of the material is decorated with patterns closely connected with each other. Although the designs on phulkaris are often figurative, bag almost always bears geometric patterning. Often, the accomplishment of a bride and her mother was judged by the beautifully embroidered phulkaris. An auspicious time was chosen to start the embroidery of the phulkari that had to be worn by the girl at the time of the wedding, with appropriate ceremony and prayers. Sweets and prasad were offered before embroidering the phulkari by the mother or the grandmother. The affluence of a family too was judged by the number and the work of phulkari they gave their daughters in trousseau. As an ongoing tradition in Punjab, Phulkari still stands out among various other embroidery traditions due to its emotional, social and cultural value. This art form provided a canvas to the women for maximum expression of their imagination and skill in a society which would, at that time, snatch even their right to live. Though the knowledge of its origin still remains in the dark, it is a wonderful example of numerous cultures, like much of the art and craft in India. And like much of art and craft in India, there's a need to return to it in its original, creative and sanctified form that was lost during the colonial times as a result of Industrial Revolution coming to India. It was, however, labor that was behind the intricate patterns and designs. Arguments may be made for technological advancements. But what excuses justify the loss of priceless skill to the mindless drudgery for mass production?